anxiety and depression and all these things that are becoming just like the regular byproducts of social media use. It's like cigarettes give you cancer and social media gives you anxiety. So it's like these are the warning labels that might need to start coming on all of these platforms.
Hi, welcome to the Quotidian podcast. My name is Bradley Dennis, and I am thrilled to bring you my conversation with Grace Helbig and Elliott Morgan, who at the time of this filming were fianced, but as you're watching this, are now husband and wife. So congratulations to the two of you. I first met Grace at the Pacifica Graduate Institute, so if you've seen any of these episodes, you know that I spent the last 2 years there in a graduate program. Grace happened to be in that program as well, and in another program at that school was her now husband, Elliott Morgan. You probably know these two as they are seminal figures in the YouTube platform world. Grace, of course, had several different shows and has been a originator of the form for the last 15 years or more. Elliott also has his own stamp that he's put on this world. So I am thrilled not only to have them in the same studio talking to me, but to know that these two are spending the rest of their lives together, and I can't wait to see what they create together. We spoke about their history together. We spoke about the dangers of social media in this age of anxiety, and how these tools can be used to transform rather than simply amuse or to entertain and edify. I'm thrilled with this episode, and this kind of marks the inauguration of this series, Love and Work, where I'm exploring the interplay between relationships of creative couples and their creative work, their creative energies. So I'm thrilled that you're here to be a part of this exploration. I'd like to take a moment and thank Carolina Commons for producing this series and the Quotidian podcast. Carolina Commons is a community platform based in North Carolina that exists to serve the creative voice wherever it is found in everyday people. That's why the Quotidian exists. It's here to basically amplify the creative voice in all of us. So if you like what we're doing, if you want to see more of it, if you'd like to be a part of it, please go to our Patreon page and consider becoming a subscriber. Thank you for being here. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for putting all those likey button thingies in that make us please algorithm gods and goddesses. I'm sure that they're out there. So without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with the amazing, talented duo that is Grace Helbig and Elliott Morgan. Grace, Elliott, it is a pleasure to have you on the Quotidian. Thank you guys so much for being here. It's great to see your faces. How are you?
So good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
This week.
This week. We're doing well this
Today,
week.
This hour, we're doing very well.
On this day, in this moment of time, it's good.
We'll see how we're doing in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll check in again. How are you, Bradley?
To keep you entertained. I'm doing okay. I thought I had the virus, the corona. 2 days ago, I got back from a week-long retreat and my throat started getting scratchy and I was really tired and I went, oh crap. Okay. It's taken me 3 years and now I'm finally getting it. And I tested negative today and now it's gone.
Are you a fellow, you're co-virgin or whatever they're called?
Is that what it is?
Yeah. If you haven't had it, if you've never had COVID, you're a co-virgin.
Wow.
I am one. So it's.
Yes. I'm one of those ridiculously lucky, I guess, people. Although I'm really worried that when it does hit, it's going to slap me silly. And I'm over 50, so that's telling.
Yeah, maybe
it's
this
make
is
up for it.
Yeah.
This is your test run.
Could be.
Also, Bradley, we can't see your face anymore right now.
Oh boy.
I don't know if that's. There we go. Now you're back.
Yeah, that would be my internet. Thanks, internet. You're charming.
It's back.
So charming.
No worries, just making sure.
Yeah.
I was
now
like, Bradley said hello, and then he said, nope, you're not going to look at me.
And we're done.
See ya. See ya. Nope. Can't see me. Yeah, I think all of the signal will actually go up to the cloud and do its magical thing, regardless of whether or not we can see. So
Okay,
I am here.
Cool. We will persevere. We have all the backup stuff happening on our recording end, so all good.
That's amazing. You guys are beautiful.
Our producers are right behind the cameras. They're bringing us everything.
Yeah, I love it.
The whole team.
Yeah, my team is waiting at their dog bowls. So, congratulations on finishing your master's programs, which you guys did concurrently, right? Like you both entered at the same time.
Yes, we did. We both.
What in God's name were you thinking?
It's a great question. Do we believe in God?
Yeah, or all of them.
What in heaven's name? What in your name?
I feel like we were both going through the very, first few months of the pandemic. And at that point, Elliott had worked in an office up until then, and I had worked from home. So we became very much in the same physical space very quickly. And I think with everyone at that same time, it was kind of like, oh, there's so much uncertainty. What do we do? I know for myself at the time, I was feeling very much kind of burnt out and stuck in the creative world that I was working in. And we had been having a ton of conversations about like, what's next? Like, what do we want to do? And I had known I'd always wanted to study psychology, but in doing some research about it, there was really such minimal outlets for it of either like clinical, you become a therapist, organizational, like you work in companies helping them like structure and restructure, or like advertising. And I didn't want to do any of those. And then your therapist actually recommended Pacifica for me to start looking at it. And when I started looking at it, it's just like, I found my program there. I'm also going to go.
I sold immediately.
Yeah, and I was still taking my time trying to decide
I
if
had
maybe,
a similar experience.
Maybe I wanted to do clinical or one of the other programs. And I was like, well, he's already made his decision. What do I do? And then seeing at the time, engaged humanities in the creative life, I was like, well, that is a mouthful.
There's some words.
Yeah, that's
That's
slightly
a lot of words to fit on a
undefined.
diploma.
Yeah, it's very enticing in its complete.
I could go with vague.
Yeah, what is this? All right, let me go find out. And so we both, ended up starting at the same time.
As I think I may have let you guys know, this whole series is entitled Love and Work. And so I was looking for couples who are both creative and whose lives are intertwined, whether or not it's creatively, but at least as life partners, and moving forward and seeing how the two kind of interact with one another. So as a way, as if people didn't already know who the hell you were, would you guys take a second and sort of introduce yourselves and your creative identities?
Sure. My name is Grace Helbig. I started making videos back in 2008, and I was living in New York.
You've
doing
heard
comedy
this.
Classes,
I know you've heard this spiel so many times.
You know, I just it took off, and then it was like a whirlwind, and now
So
know
you've
we're
read
just
my
figuring
book.
out what's next. Yes, and I wrote 2 books.
No,
And I'm starting hormone therapy now.
Doing hormone, yes, and I feel much better about my. No, it's all been. You can, I guess, answer for yourself.
Yeah.
No, yes, okay. My name is Grace Helbig,
This is actually a good take.
and I found myself in the world of like new media, content creation, digital content creation, and that had gone on since 2008. So, almost 15 years now at this point. And Elliott and I actually met years and years and years ago through the world of YouTube. Because, Elliott, you were doing what?
I was on a program called SourceFed, which was a comedy news network for millennials on YouTube, where we would get up at 6 a.m. and we would do 5 videos a day about current events and try to be funny, and people really liked it. And then I transitioned into doing stand-up, and now I'm in school. Mm-hmm. There you go. We should have probably prepped a little more.
No, I'm not doing any of that.
Yeah, now our lives are radically different.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you started to segue into this. How exactly did you meet? What's your origin story?
I don't know the first time. Like, I always knew of SourceFed, and I was invited to come and collaborate with them in their offices. And it was like, you have to be here at 8 a.m. And I was like, that's an insane time to start making YouTube videos. Because at that point, I was doing them by myself at home every day. So completely living in the luxury of my own timelines.
Yeah.
And I remember I went to their offices and they were like a machine. I mean, it was a very silly machine, but it was still so different than the world in which I was creating in. And I was so impressed by, one, that they had this big office space that was full of people kind of fluttering around making content all day long. It was kind of this like news-centric Pee-wee's Playhouse that I was like, I don't know why they invited me here to participate, because I felt you guys were doing like very substantial content that meant something, whereas I was going home and drawing hot dogs on my face. So there was two.
Yeah. Very substantial.
There was two different kind of two different styles of content, but still along the same silly lines. And so we had known each other as creators, kind of operating in the same industry.
That was 2012.
2012, yeah. So 10 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, because if you go back and you watch videos of us together that day, it is very funny, because I always thought Elliot was, he thought he was better than everyone. And he was this quick-witted, super smart, incredibly like news
Jerk.
like understanding person, whereas that was not at all who I was. I was running around like an actual Muppet. And so I was just like, wow, those guys are cool and they do something different than me. And so we were always like cordial and casual at like conventions and things like that.
And I hadn't hit puberty yet. And so that was a big, I changed a little bit and life hit me and I got humbled a couple
Your
times.
voice dropped,
And
you
so
got some facial
hair. That was
hair
probably a good
and
thing
some
ultimately for our
respect.
relationship. Exactly.
Yeah.
And
I
now-
never
and now
looked
look at you,
back. I've been
master's
pretending to be
degree.
an adult ever since.
It's beautiful. Well, if it's
I mean, my goodness.
if it's the same episode that I'm thinking of, it was you running around. There was quite a number of costumes. Like there was a gigantic rack of costumes or something like that, and you were doing a bunch of costume changes. It seemed like two shows had collided, and a third thing happened.
Yeah, it was amazing that they were trying to like fit me into their content at the time, because it was also the era of YouTube where every creators were trying to collaborate with each other and weren't, asking for money from each other to work with each other. Like this was just like an honor to go to the SourceFed office and be working with them, and to like have some of my own content from that. And that was like the darling, I feel like, era of that, where everyone was just so excited that this was our job. Couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And that there were other people doing this job. So yeah, I want to make content with that other person. Yeah, I want to make content with this other group. And so it was a very much like a hungry to like work together in different capacities, or figure out how like two different but similar kind of energies could collide.
Nice.
Yeah, that was a bunch of words.
And
Beautifully said.
it's a lot of words, but I mean the both of you basically helped develop the form. I mean, it was kind of the Wild West for a long time, and YouTube certainly was. There wasn't a lot of content, and what was there, it was very specific. So, is that still the case for you guys? Do you feel like you're creating a third thing? Because both, I know, Elliot, you have are you still doing a podcast?
We do it when we can get ourselves to do it. Yeah. We do I do the fundamentalists with a philosopher friend of mine named Peter Rollins, and then
He's a Freudian.
A Freudian. If you, he's
Ooh.
one of those, and a Lacanian. Excuse me.
Sorry, I misspoke.
And he's a very fun podcast. But then I do the Valley Cast, which was part of the Valley Folk, which was another like comedy thing. But in terms of what you're talking about, Bradley, I mean, I don't want to take credit where I feel like Grace definitely changed the form a little bit, and I was part of something that I think popped a little bit and had its time. But Grace definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like I came along on this like second tier, like the Green brothers, like John and Hank Green, and even Michael Buckley and I Justine and all of these other really original content creators. I remember watching them and being like, whoa, you can do this. This is so interesting, and kind of following them. And then SourceFed was one of the first like YouTube invested companies, right? It was created by Phil DeFranco, another like one OG of YouTube at the time, that was bringing news to a platform that, you know, diversifying the types of content that you could find there. And he got financial backing from YouTube to invest in making a news network, which was SourceFed. And then you guys eventually broke off and created your own original group without the umbrella of the Phil DeFranco name, called Valley Folk. So it was just a time of like experimentation.
So obviously you guys are funny people.
Was that even the question?
It is. Absolutely. We're in the territory. We're all in the same fruit bowl.
Yeah.
So since you guys are both self-modeled comedians, self-labeled comedians, you've done that work, you've both been steeped in improv, you're quick-witted, as far as I can tell, and now you're both graduated from master's school. You're masters. I think that's actually the term. You're a master. Master
I told
Elliott.
my friends, I was like, you don't have to call me Master Elliott, but it's not wrong if you do. So
I don't know in 2020 if that's going to last very long.
that probably wasn't a good joke. What was your question? Sorry, Bradley.
How it affects what we do now. I think that's at least for me right now, and Bradley, I'm sure you're probably in the same boat, and maybe this is what infuses your podcast, is that the going back to school and studying something that I didn't know Carl Jung. Like, I knew the name. I didn't know anything about him before I had signed up and been accepted into the program. And really, you know, on the very first Zoom meeting that I remember we all had, where we were introducing each other to each other, I was like, ooh, I should have done some research on what this whole world is. What have I gotten myself into?
What have I gotten myself into? Yeah.
But at that point, it was like having so many years of doing what started as this like brand new Wild West, exciting experimental content had become very like cyclical and very kind of had lost its soul spark, I guess, for me in a way. And so being able to move towards something that offered me structure, like school, when I had spent 10 years of time having no structure other than self-imposed structure, and studying something that, you know, promoted the idea of fostering creativity, but with actual literal depth, was really exciting. But now I'm in that phase where it's over, and I really have to consider how this infuses and informs the way I create.
Yeah.
And it's not as immediate as I thought originally 2 years ago that it might be. And maybe that's the point. I've learned to really slow down.
That are just popping off.
Yeah, I haven't figured out, you know, I really thought it was all of a sudden going to be like, here's another path. Go, Grace. You go this way now.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to think or decide.
instead, it's just like, here's a forest, run in it, bounce around, see what you find, and maybe you'll get out at some point.
It's you know, it's like LinkedIn for comedians. They're just looking for comedians who have a gigantic resume filled with depth psychological content. That's what really fills the seats.
Breaking down the doors.
Exactly. But how about for you, Elliot?
I think if I had to, I mean, one of the benefits of doing Pacifica is I think you get to, or studying depth psychology is you get to look back on your life through different lenses, and it gives you different ways of viewing what happened.
Yeah.
And if I look back now, I think a lot of it was like there's a very egoic thing with doing comedy and doing stand-up and doing any kind of entertainment, and I felt like if I could continue to do that but do it for like a bigger cause or reason or purpose, then it might be a better way than just continuing to be like, oh, what can I do for me now? Like, it just felt very like I needed to kind of sacrifice for something and go back to basics and kind of reinvent a little bit. And so that's the goal right now.
So if I can ask a question about your relationship and your work, how has your relationship changed as a result of your comedy? I would imagine you guys collaborate a little bit, certainly bouncing jokes or ideas off one another.
Yeah, we definitely. It's been so incredible to have kind of this, built-in support system emotionally, but also a built-in support system creatively and now academically. Like, I felt like us going through these programs at the same time, I was like, are we even allowed to do this? This feels like cheating that I get done reading and posting and I go to him and I'm like, does this make sense? And I feel like I have an in-house like expert. And so it's like, this is actually incredible and really unique and special that we were able to experience this education in different paths, but, congruent to each other. And we've spent, I think, a lot of time doing our individual education while it like crosses over. And now we're kind of excited and been talking about collaborating more in content kind of settings.
Yeah, doing some kind of an official content collaboration would be nice. But we kind of, I think a lot of our bread and butter is just sort of hanging out and joking about what we're learning or what the professor said or what the other, member of the cohort said, and having like a partner in crime has been very nice. And it just makes it a lot like less stressful. And there's just little easy things of Grace being like, oh, don't forget you got to like register for your classes, or me being like, don't forget you got to buy your books, babe. And like that
him being like, nice. Don't forget you're awful at APA. Right. Here's how you do it. And it's me constantly being like, I don't know, P or PG. Yeah. I don't remember.
Is there a decimal behind? I mean, a period behind a period behind this closed parentheses?
Yeah.
The answer is yes. There's a period behind everything. So, what about the opposite? How does being in to use the nomenclature, being in a creative dyad, detract from your creative process, if at all?
Have you ever seen those videos on Instagram of raccoons fighting each other?
No, but I saw one coming out of a dumpster who looked like Superman today.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well,
the slide.
Yeah, that's my favorite video now that's making the rounds. I love it. I
feel this energy.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times now. And the other day I was just like, I just love, there's such energy behind this that I'm obsessed with. I think the one thing I feel like, and I don't want to speak for you, but like when we first got together as two separate content creators, we were like trying to figure out how we collaborate together, but also wanted to maintain our relationship without it being solely based on this need to constantly collaborate with each other. And so that's kind of why school, was a big, wonderful thing for us to be able to kind of not be so caught up in just the hamster wheel of feeling the pressure to make content all the time, the record wheel, and to be able to do like our separate things, but also have them sort of mesh together. And I think we've kind of gotten more excited to make content together rather than feeling like we should make content together, and trying to like, churn something out that's not really great just for the sake of being able to do it, that we have like, all of the equipment and stuff. So I think we're trying to figure out the thoughtfulness behind how we work together and also maintain like our own autonomy in our own creative worlds, and not feel totally beholden to have to collaborate all the time.
Yes, that is well said.
Everything
I agree
that you
with
said.
everything.
Thank God.
Can you talk a little bit, like, Grace, I know a lot of your work, well, you're very prolific these days. And I can't quite imagine how you were able to do so much over the last 2
damn.
years and still get all of your work done, because you're doing a podcast, you're interviewing people, you're also doing your show. Like, what the fuck? How are you finding content?
Yeah. Well, well, to be honest, that's not how I've felt this whole time. I've really felt like in starting school, I started to drop a lot of the things around me that I was working on and really try to make space, which was incredibly uncomfortable because I had come from years of conditioning myself to believe I need to be constantly making something. I need to be constantly doing something, and that's value, that's self-worth, and that's the life cycle of someone online. I've seen it happen. If you slow down, you get ignored, you get people won't remember you, they move on. And so it's this constant like snake eating its tail, but not in a good way, not in the death rebirth way, just in like a cannibalizing itself. And so I started to really drop things, but also you still have this need to be creative. And I think one of the biggest things that school taught me is just like, it's okay to not know exactly where you are in your creative world right now, and to just sort of like really be in that and pay attention to what those feelings are, because I was moving so quickly before school started that I was sensing that I was feeling off and bad and burnt out, but I wouldn't let myself like really face that head on. And it's still an ongoing process. I feel like I'm finally getting a little bit of excitement about maybe making more content. But we'll see if I have the follow through for that. But I can't believe that, like, anytime I felt overwhelmed about the work, and we've talked about this too, I couldn't believe that everyone else in our program had full-time jobs, full families, yourself, and like the fact that you guys were getting all of your stuff done with like real substantial life and work things, while it's just us sort of dicking around. Like that, what you guys accomplished is way more impressive than what we did.
It's all a matter of perspective, isn't it?
I could see that I also didn't want to just like do school the way I had conditioned myself to make content, in that just get it done and move on to what's next, just get it done. Like, I think only in the second to last quarter of the program did it really hit me that like, I gotta be present with this work right now and like stop just moving through it like the Kool-Aid man, and just like actually pay attention, because it's going to be over soon. And I'm going to look back and be like, oh man, I wish I was like there with this material more than just trying to get it done. I don't know if you've had, Elliot, the same feelings.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what one of my professors at Pacifica said. Dylan Hoffman, at one point on one of our first residentials, he was like, you can go through these programs and not really be doing depth psychology and still get like a degree. But if you really, really want to do it, it takes something more than just like reading and doing posts. Like, you got to go into it. And so I think no one can do that all the time, but definitely as you get more inundated with it, I think it becomes kind of impossible to not sink in a little bit further. Mm-hmm. So I think I just repeated what you said.
You're so succinct, though. I'm curious. Because you guys did such parallel scholarship, and which, like Dylan, I know, taught in both programs that you guys took, and there's so much crossover, and it's all kind of based in the same pedagogy. How much do you feel that material is absorbing or transmitting itself into your work? I know, Grace, you said that you're now starting to kind of sink into ideas of maybe producing something, and you've talked about collaborating on things, but like, where are your ideas taking you now that you've really boiled yourselves in this Jungian stew pot, for an archetypal psychological stew pot, for so long?
Beautiful way to put that.
Mm-hmm. And thank you for telling us how to pronounce pedagogy.
Elliot?
I think I think one of the major benefits, is it's gotten me really curious about a whole bunch of other areas, and so it's sort of awakened in me a really nice appetite for knowledge from other areas that aren't just like depth psychological. Like it's getting me interested in history and in politics and in figuring out kind of where, like, okay, I got the depth stuff. I have a general like worldview, but what do I build off of that? Like if I know this base and if, how do I actually apply this to real material issues that are going on in the world? And then how do I try to do that in a way that doesn't come off like I'm trying to be, like boring or preachy or anything like that, and like keep it lighthearted. I think a lot of people right now are generally very hungry for stuff with depth, but also with levity. And that's kind of, as broad strokes as that is, kind of, I guess, the goal that I'm hoping to go in. And I think Pacific
for sure
with that a lot.
And there's a lot, talking about archetypes. I know, Grace, you and I have talked about the trickster and bringing that energy into work.
Yeah.
And obviously in comedy, there's that presence of both being the failure and being vulnerable, as well as poking fun at and showing the failure and the vulnerability of others. It seems like there's a lot of applications for that, especially now. And there's so many buffoons to make fun of.
Yes.
Again.
I think just that, Bradley, like Elliot, I think is extremely academically minded. Like I said, he came from this SourceFed platform that was just like it was, intelligent and well thought, and then presented in a clownish kind of way. And, but you've always had just such an, you're a voracious person for education. Like you eat it up, you devour books. And I think you really are hungry for knowledge. And entering into an academic setting, I was so overwhelmed that like you have to take on this type of brain structure that I just, never really had. But throughout the program, I really reminded myself to connect to the trickster, to connect to like this can be silly and serious at the same time. And that's what I started doing online that I loved, that I felt like I fell away from like the joy of being silly. And I was taking on just the pressure of being available online and feeling too kind of overwhelmed by all of that. So I've been, and you and I have talked about this before, like just really trying to get connected back to the fun, silly, but also with like sneaky depth, like the hermeneutic kind of style of communication of just like a wink communicates so much more than you can say in like a full, lecture. So I'm trying to figure out how that morphs into, or at least just trying to keep that as like the foundation. Like when I feel really stuck, just reminding myself to, well, what could be fun or silly about this?
One of the things too that I've found is with both of us, I mean, again, I don't want to speak for you, Grace, but I would say that when you're bringing like the quote unquote trickster kind of thing, the hermeneutic thing, it tells you very quickly whether or not you're doing it because you're trying to communicate something subversively or humorously, or if you're doing it because you're being defensive and you don't want to be vulnerable at all. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, now I'm learning something else about myself, and now I got to incorporate it. Now I got to actually be serious, and this is going to be uncomfortable, and here we go.
That's a beautiful thing about improv in particular. And improv is such a wonderful skill, but we reveal so much about ourselves. The whole idea of saying yes and to whatever the fuck comes up, and going with it, warts and all. I mean, what could be more therapeutic potentially, I guess, could also be a disaster. But when you really give yourself, up to that, it's, I forget, what's the Del Close quote about, you quoted this in one of our classes about, I can't remember, I'm going to butcher it, but something about the beauty of...
Follow your fear?
Follow your fear, thank you. Yes, I knew it was something absolutely pithy and brilliant.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, that's Joseph Campbell, right? That's the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Well, that's it in 3 words, and on stage in front of people. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely
improv too. I feel
Go
like.
ahead.
Oh, sorry. Improv, I think too. Anyway, improv, I think helps when you. We'll get it. It'll come together in post. Improv, I think also shows like there's something going on unconsciously. Like the depth psychology is the psychology of the unconscious, and when there's been moments, not many, because improv is not like, super my thing, but moments where like stuff comes out where you go, I don't know who said that. I don't know where that came from. I picked up on something, or someone else picked up on something I said, and they say it at such a perfect time. They're like, what's happening here in this like between space between these human beings? And a lot of depth psychology is being like, this is what's happening, or this is what could be happening, or this is a way of thinking about it. And I think that's really cool.
It's a nice thing. Oh God, I forget everything now that I'm not in a regular scholarly practice, but I think I was reading something about the value of the only way you can read text on a page is because the page is white, right? And it's the spaces around the letters that allow you to see the letters. It's not the letters themselves. It's all this other negative space around it. And to that point, of depth psychology and comedy, for that matter, is all about. It's all about the failure. It's all about the being human. It's all about the space in between. And yeah, it seems like a real natural progression.
Yep. We hope.
Here's hoping. Yeah, no, we're just letting it sink in.
Exactly. Beautiful.
Bathing in it.
Where to go from here? I don't know. What's making you guys interested? What's exciting you guys right now? Especially given what you've just experienced and the fact that you're kind of just sinking into, real life and stuff.
I think you're excited that you're in your PhD program. That's huge.
Right outside the door.
Yeah. And that you've announced it. I had that moment of panic of like, did I just say something that wasn't knowledge?
Grace Helbig.
Story of my life. Did I just say something that wasn't knowledge is the log line of my entire Pacifica journey.
I'm sorry. And I'm sorry.
But your PhD is a huge endeavor that you are starting out on. You just crossed a major threshold.
It was very nice. I got 1 year of studies, and then I got 2 years of PhD, but it is crazy how fast 2 years goes by.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited about it. But in terms of, in general, of things looking forward, I think both Grace and I have, and again, I don't want to, speak, we don't want to speak for each other.
We're so respectful of each other.
So
Jesus.
It's exhausting. But I think it's going to be really interesting just kind of for us to make some hard creative decisions about what is actually going to materialize out of this, instead of, it's very easy for me to go, I'm doing school, I can't do anything, I can't undertake a new project. And I think a lot of that is fear, and so I don't want school to become like a way for me to hide necessarily from the world, even though I love it very much. So it's a matter of figuring out how to balance that and what it's going to look like, I think, for both of us. I mean, Grace.
That's for sure what I'm going through, is that I really felt like, for good reason, I used school as a safety net, because it gave me permission to really step back from feeling completely suffocated by the internet, and offered me a new language and a new perspective to look at that world, and not just feel resentment for feeling stuck in that world. And though I'm still constantly, trying to make sense of my relationship with it, I do feel like I gave myself a hibernation period with school. And now, though it is incredibly scary and I have a lot of fear about it, I really would like to challenge myself, encourage myself, maybe it's a more gentle word, to make content again. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I know that one of the, like, if I had to try to guess what my Eggcorn theory, walnut would be, it's that I want to make people laugh, but I also want to like help people in some way. And if laughter is the best way to help them, because I can't be a doctor, so that is the only medicine I can really prescribe to people. I have taken my time to try and like look at this world that was bringing me a lot of stress and be able to kind of shift a perspective, which I think depth psychology does in general, no matter what creative endeavor you're in, no matter what professional practice you're in, it's able to kind of shift the way you perceive yourself and you perceive that yourself in that world. And so I don't want to rest on my heels. I want to kind of like push myself forward the same way I sort of push myself forward into the school and the program in general, and see what happens, say yes, and then and figure it out from there. So that's what's next, is that we really have used this as a safety net. And I think both of us are kind of excited and terrified to like challenge and push ourselves to like actually start doing stuff again.
Yeah. And I think there's a, that fear of not being able to like come back or to take a break and, everything will be destroyed when you come back. One of the things that I think Grace and I think originally bonded over, or at least connected on, was a kind of an acknowledgement that we're very fortunate to have however many people who actually watch us over the years and who continue to watch us and who continue to support in whatever iteration it is. And so it's like, it's also going like, well, what do they want? Like, how am I helping those specific people who weirdly know me, even though they don't think that they know me, or they say that they don't. I'm like, no, you kind of have seen me go from the
10 years.
Yeah, that's
like
a long
10
time.
years is a long time to be watching any person in any capacity. So it is its own form of collaboration in that sense, to be like, you're growing with this audience, but you still want to be able to communicate effectively and be communicated to by your audience effectively and work together in some way. That's truly like why the internet has become so the biggest thing ever, is this like availability and immediacy and like this form of connection that can be so raw and vulnerable and can be so immediate and effective at the same time. So I think it can also be completely overwhelming and a chaos zone all unto itself. So it's finding, at least for me, finding the balance of how I dip a toe in without feeling like a Loch Ness monster just ripped me back down into the pond. So that's what we'll be working on.
Killing the metaphors, baby. Great stuff.
Hey, I learned something from James Hillman.
There you go.
Monsters.
Can you tell that my final paper I handed in last week cited Hillman primarily?
Beautiful. Nice name drop. Snap. Well, and there's nothing.
Hey, I gotta prove I got an education in
there's
something.
nothing more relatable than the human experience, right? And it's interesting to hear you talk about the last 10 years where people have gotten to know you, obviously, and you're following the zeitgeist of your own intuition and your own intention as relates to your experience of the world. And so there's this kind of back and forth play. I'm curious for you, Elliott, as you're thinking about pursuing this, or are pursuing this doctorate. I'm assuming it's in the DJA program, which is the Jungian mythological studies. Another one of those really highly applicable
Jungian archetypal
doctorates.
Right. Words that no one knows what they mean.
When people ask me what's Elliott getting his degree in, I have to be like, psychology.
Yep. Yeah, all the words.
And then you kind of wink and you wait.
Death psychology?
Please no follow-up questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is death psychology. Yeah, I mean, what was your question? Sorry, brother.
How are you going to use your damn doctorate? That's the punchline.
Yeah.
Ooh, my goal is a lot. Well, this is. I don't want to talk crap about anybody specific, but I will say that a lot of the inspiration Sorry, buckle up.
Here we go.
This is going to get slanderous. A lot of the inspiration came from seeing a lot of public figures who say a lot of things that I think are detrimental, specifically to young men, and right now it seems to be growing. And so a lot of this stuff that I've written about in school has been about that kind of demo, and I think a lot of that comes from having done...
Name names.
Ooh, where do I begin? Some of them are unions. So, yeah, I mean, name names. That's exactly actually what one of my professors said in my paper.
Who specifically are you talking about?
Who are you talking about?
I'm not risking it.
Get risky.
Yeah. Like, I'll send you a link. But, yeah, so I think my goal is to kind of be a... You know, a lot of it goes back to... And I think Grace can relate to this, but again, I would never want to speak for you. But a lot of the people...
It's getting annoying now. God.
A lot of the people throughout the years have referred to this kind of generation of YouTubers as being akin to like a big sibling or a big cousin or something like that they've sort of gotten to grow up with. And now that they're grown and then we're kind of growing in our own ways, I think it's a lot kind of carrying that forward, but in a more mature, thoughtful way. And when I look at the internet right now and a lot of public speakers, it feels like their job is to rile people up and be as divisive as possible. Yeah. And I don't like that. So my goal is to remedy that in whatever medium possible.
It's funny, too, because I think about people like Emma Chamberlain, who's done... basically had a camera on her for the last, 5-6 years. And you've seen this maturation process and complete transformation into, a Vogue superstar, essentially, and now doing these completely different things.
Yeah.
That, I think, the number 1 and 2 ambitions of young people right now in terms of career goals are... YouTube influencer and Instagram model, right? Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And that doesn't happen for everybody, right? That can't happen for everybody, and we wouldn't want it to happen for everybody.
No,
that's that's my a lot of my work and investigation and kind of ruminating on and projects presented at school started to slowly hone in on this idea of persona and this over identification with the mask version of ourselves, which is essentially the way so many people kind of unconsciously operate on social media platforms, myself included. The reason this became such a important piece for me in all the things that we were learning about at Pacifica was because that's what I felt myself trapped in was, oh my God, I had this amazing opportunity to work in this world that was developing as I was developing my comedy voice. And in doing that, I became totally locked into this idea of myself that I had cultivated just completely externally online with constant external validation and feedback from an audience, and really solidified, like, this is who I am and this is how I operate around everyone else except for myself. And so, that's a real icky place to be in after a while. And I'm concerned that that is happening so unconsciously with so many people, especially now that they're access to the internet is inborn. It's embedded in their hand the minute that they're born. And all of this, new wave of content creators have been doing this since they were like 6 or 7 years old. I mean, I started doing this when I was 21. Wow. So I had some idea of my youth without this access and without a constant representation of myself being presented to the world. When I started improv, it was like the conscious choice to present myself in a performance way. And then doing internet, even if you're not trying to be a performer, you're unconsciously making a choice to present yourself performatively to an audience. And that, I feel like over time, is just going to embed itself to the point that people aren't going to realize when they're performing and how to be if they're not performing. I feel like... we just watched this documentary about Woodstock 99 and how absolutely fucking chaotically terrible it was. And the craziest part is that we're watching this going, wow, I remember hearing that it was terrible, but not this bad. And it's because everyone, not a single person there had a phone. Not a single person there. All the camera footage is from MTV or people that brought, at-home cameras. And that's not the case anymore. Everyone has phones. Everyone's performing. Everyone's documenting everything. And so there's a huge concern for me about just the over-identification with the way we express ourselves online being more valid because there's numbers attached to it than, inner validity, aka psychic wholeness, I guess, in some capacity.
Yeah.
So
what's the psychic or the existential version of your face muscles hurting from smiling too much, right? Like, you realize that you've been on camera for the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, I am stuck in this. Exactly. Who am I?
Who am I?
I mean, what an awful existential crisis.
Ta-da! And that's what brought me to Pacifica.
Yeah, we're also all these we don't want to be the get off the lawn
no, that's the thing,
because we're guilty of it every day, and we're also going not even just with posting things, but we'll sit there and we made up for posting with scrolling 10 times over.
But that's the thing to me, is that it's realizing that it's a tool that you build a relationship with, the same way like you have a relationship with a hammer that you use to put a nail in a wall, and you don't need to hold the hammer while you're making eggs in the morning all the time. Perfect. That this thing can be seen as...
That's one way to crack an egg.
Yeah, I mean, I have been doing it strange lately, but I feel like there's I only speak from my own personal experience with it that maybe speaks to other people's experiences. Realizing that it's, everyone cultivates their own unique experience and relationship with it is important. It's just like investigating what that relationship is and how it feels for you, and where can it be positive for you and where is it maybe negative for you.
And I realize the irony. I'm creating a course online specifically designed to help young people reclaim attention and who are kind of suffering from anxiety and depression as a result of, among other things, overuse of social media. And the irony of putting that material online is a little hard for me to swallow. But like, here's an sponsored Instagram ad about how you should stop using your phone so much. Like, who the hell are you, buddy?
Come join me in this class about learning to regain your confidence. Just like this post.
Like and subscribe. All right. Yeah. Take your life back.
Oh, that's great.
Right on. Wow. The time. This is like, we could start here and have a whole nother podcast just about this material.
I know. I feel like we just hit our stride on what we're talking about here.
I want to pose my final question to you guys, and you can take this wherever you like. You can answer together. You can answer separate. Actually, why doesn't Elliot just answer for you? Because obviously he speaks for you and everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah. He's getting a PhD after all. He can speak for me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, what is the question that's not being asked?
Now let's think about this for a moment. Let's close our eyes.
Some guided meditation. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind was like...
Excuse me.
Oh, right.
Excuse me.
You speak for my mind.
Yes, I got it. No, go ahead.
No, the first question, and this doesn't make sense to me because I do think this is what people are asking themselves more and more now, is like, how do I get okay? Like, I think there's a huge obvious highlight and emphasis on mental health. I don't find it surprising that it's coming on the heels of having the internet and social media for this many years. I think this is the natural byproduct of it, the cycle of it. And I think people are, I have anxiety and depression and all these things that are becoming just like the regular byproducts of social media use. It's like
Yeah.
cigarettes give you cancer and social media gives you anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's like these are the warning labels that might need to start coming on all of these platforms. But I think, at least for me, the question I have started to ask myself are like, how can I be okay, rather than like, am I okay?
Yeah.
Because the answer is always going to be like, no, and then it stops there.
Right.
And all I do is feel bad. So it's like, how can I?
Yeah.
But that's a specific to me question. That's not general.
That's okay.
Universal question.
You're not going to believe it, Grace. That's very similar to what I was going to say.
Okay.
But it's more long. It's more wordy, and it's not as good.
Okay.
But I was thinking about that question. I was like, there's something to be said for when you're anxious and when you're in programs that you're learning about stuff that's difficult to articulate, let alone implement. You're constantly asking yourself questions to the point that I think the only question that needs to be asked is like, why are you so worried? Like, it's gonna be okay. Like, why are you driving yourself insane worrying about how to fix the next thing?
Yeah.
And I think that is like maybe a nice, because a lot of the Hillman stuff that I really liked was in archetypal psychology is like recognizing that the ego is very often heroically driven, and it wants to conquer any bad thing that comes your way. But if you just like sit down and you're like, okay, I don't need to fix everything right now, and I don't need to have the answer to every question.
Right.
Then I think that's really nice. I'm not there, but maybe one day.
One day.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's so easier said than done, but I feel you. Yeah.
But absolutely, there is something to be said for living in the question for a little while, and things will move forward. They might not be comfortable. In fact, they'll probably get worse before they get better, but we're all moving forward, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you can either run screaming, or you can stand and face the wave as it comes, or get to higher ground. I guess that's the other option. So
And get a boat.
get to higher ground and help other people. Bring them
There
with
you
you.
go.
Get a boat. Build a boat. That's what we've learned today.
Exactly.
Well, Grace and Elliot, it's a pleasure. Thank you guys so much. It's great to see you, and congratulations on finishing this step, and good luck on all that you're getting ready to do.
Thanks, Bradley. Thank you for having us, and preemptive congratulations when you finish your next step.
Yep. Thank you, Bradley, and
Thank you.
congrats, pre-congrats, and yeah, I mean, we could keep chatting for hours,
know.
like you said, but thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Take care, you guys.